It's here. It's time. We get to live stream for the Bold Business Podcast today. You're in the right place for conversations about how to increase the capacity of not only yourself, not only your team, but your entire company at the same time. This program is about the skills that we need to lead a resilient business and be a resilient leader. I am super excited today to have Dr. Benjamin Ritter with me today. Now, not only is he a leadership coach and a career coach, he likes values just like I do. And I have to tell you, this is going to be one of the things that I know we're probably going to spend some time with today because we share other things in common too. But I'm going to just start with that and just give him a couple more accolades, which is he's an international speaker, he's a podcaster, author, mentor, and most importantly, he's passionate about guiding others to find, create, and sustain a career they love. Notice he didn't say job that you love. He said career that you love. Hey, Dr. Benjamin Ritter, welcome.
Hey, welcome. Happy to be here.
Good.
And, I think there's like jobs in the career. So hopefully we love the jobs along the way. But if we can keep our mind and perspective on the career, things get a little easier.
Okay, we're going to start right there because I was thinking about that this morning. We all have these growth goals, whatever they are, and whether it's ourselves, whether it's our teams, whether it's personal or professional. And I was looking at mine and I was like, oh, there's some stuff in there that I'm not going to like. But you know what? It's going to, not only do I like what I'm doing right now, the stuff that I don't like kind of just gets wrapped up. But it also is necessary to remind myself, well, that isn't what I want to be doing, or that is actually something I wanted to be doing, and I had been holding myself back. And so those things that we don't like actually make a difference.
We do this in all areas of our life and don't realize it. It's, we don't exactly like putting the dishes away sometimes. Maybe some people do, but we don't. But we like having a happy household or a clean home and like maybe pleasing our partner at the same time. With languages, we don't really probably like practicing a language at times, especially the basics, but we appreciate the ability to have a conversation in the future. And so for some reason, when it comes to work, I know why. It's because a lot of times we are overworked and we tend to have negative experiences that cloud our lenses that we're looking through to see our job each and every single day. But we get to this point where we're so bogged down that we forget the bigger picture that we're so often using to keep happier in our normal life. We just forget that within the work itself.
I'm still working on those.
Yeah, still got that going on. You know what? That was such a tough thought to swallow that now you're just choking on it. And you're just like, you know what? I have nothing to say to that, Ben. Well, I think, I mentor a lot too with like high school students and college students and stuff. And it is, I wish when I was in university that they had these programs, because to have someone approach you, and I would hope this becomes more of a conversation from parents as well. Maybe it won't be as effective, but I think it's still important that you're not supposed to know exactly what you want to do. Like even if you're 30 or 40 or 50, you're not supposed to know exactly what you want to do, but you should have some clarity what you enjoy doing, what you feel drawn to, what you're passionate about, and then what you are supposed to do comes up along the way if you show up intentionally and consistently within those values. You may have to make copies, you may have to send emails and schedule appointments, but if you're doing it in a way where you feel good about the organization, the career path you're on, it changes the game.
It is all in perspective. And one of the things that I have really recognized is if I show up with a bad mood, everything's going to be bad. And if I show up with a hopeful mood, everything is hopeful. And when I show up determined, everything gets done. And so I think that what you're talking about is so true. How we show up is going to be everything. And I think part of how we show up, I'm going to totally geek out with values and you right now, because I have to tell you, Ben, this is something that's really important to me. I want to know what your values are.
That's a really good question. It's a very good question. So my number one value is health.
Yeah.
But when I go through, so I explore, define, and align clients' values when I do values workshops a lot. But that health can be broken down into mental, spiritual, emotional, physical, etc. And those can be ranked as well. And then defining health as also confidence is something that I believe in pretty deeply. It's based on my own personal journey. And I think often people get held up with, my value is adventure, and they don't spend enough time actually breaking that down and personalizing that value to themselves, so they get lost. They don't know what adventure means at work. So for example, health at work also, includes psychological safety.
That's
And
right.
does my work give me the freedom to take care of these areas of health that I deem so important? So that, health is a really, really big one for me.
I
And
love
then if
that.
we were to go down the line, we would have openness and learning. Those are my top three
Ooh,
values.
okay. Okay. Are they the same for your business?
Yes. And so I actually, in my dissertation for my doctorate program, did a bunch of research on, are there work values or personal values? Are they different? Are they aligned? And my whole goal was to review person-job value congruence. So the values that someone perceives from their job and the values they have at their job and the jobs that they have personally, do those align? Does that lead to greater levels of job satisfaction? So I'm of the opinion that the values are the same, but the components that we attach to those values are different. Like,
That's
for
brilliant.
example, I may want more money from work, but I attach that money to my value for freedom or to my
Mhm.
value of health, even. And so I think it's important to understand what we attach our values to, despite just wanting some of the extrinsic, the extrinsic factors or intrinsic factors that come from our jobs.
Oh, so true. And it's interesting because there are 9 values that I work with: my values, my family values, and
Ooh,
my work
sharing.
values. Okay. And I'm going to share some of them, but I'm setting this up because what I heard you say is something I say, just using different words. And so I'm going to throw this out there to see if I just actually accidentally put you in the same boat as me and you're in a different boat, or we're actually rowing in the same way. And that is that for me to be able to show up to my work and make sure that everybody else in my company feels comfortable showing up to their work, I didn't want my personal values as the leader of the company, for my bigger vision, to be my personal values, because I didn't want to accidentally erode trust or over control or disempower the people around me. To your point about my value is going to show up differently when I assign certain labels to it, which is why I think we really are close on this and we're in the same boat. My number one personal value is elegance,
That's
right?
beautiful. Yeah.
Elegance.
What does
And
elegance mean to you?
well, it's definitely not graceful because I fall all the time and I'm very klutzy. It's definitely not, actually, so what it is, it's how you pick yourself back up on the other end. Right? Grace.
Mhm.
It's not making sure that everything looks beautiful, which is actually really important, but it is actually the experience that is felt by all of the different pieces put together. There's also a simplicity in that. So it's not complex. A lot of people think that elegance is all of this stuff that layers together, and it's not. For me, elegance is in this most simple, most straightforward path that we can have, because I can assure we're on the same page or not. I can assure that I know I'm fully showing up or not. I can kind of gauge and see if you are too from that perspective. So elegance, number one, I bring to everything. And that's kind of a neat one. And number one for Red Direction is bold, right? How do we be bold? And there's a boldness in taking the time to get to an elegant solution or to an experience that is elegant and has that feeling in it as well.
I like how you also identified the organizational value, because that
Mhm.
may be different than the personal value.
Yeah.
And leaders tend to mistake these are my values. This is what's important to me. This is how I'm going to lead. But sometimes that's not in alignment with the organization. And so then there's that dissonance, like you mentioned. And so often I see that kind of that gap between, this is what we state our values are. This is what we're communicating. This is what we think everyone believes our values are. And then leaders lead in accordance to their own definition of values when their employees have their own definition of values. And the leader's not spending time to actually figure out what their employees are passionate about, what gets them excited, what they love to do, et cetera, like what their true values are at their core. And that, I believe personally, it sounds like you would also get on this boat with me and we're rowing the same direction, that should be the foundation of leadership styles.
Mhm.
It's personalizing and providing that human touch based on values and specific desires for work and the career path for each individual employee that leads to a engaging workforce. Now, some organizations don't care about that. It's do or die. You either do what we do and hit our quotas or get out. And the organization
By
is
the way,
going to
that's what
attract
they
people like
value.
that.
That's what they
Yeah,
value.
exactly. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and that's actually a really hard thing, because what you're talking about is shared meaning. And that is so important that, and I was recently having a conversation with, why can't I remember his name? Of course, never mind. I'm not going to say anything about it because I don't want to misquote him, and I don't want to attribute this to anybody else. Elegance. So moving right along. To your point about that concept of, are you going to listen? Are you going to really hear what's going on? Because one of the things I heard you say, and if I were to reflect it in my own word to also expand the conversation, is what we do and what we say are great. The experience that we create is also great. And each one of us is going to show up. Like integrity. I mean, integrity is a super common business value. And we all ascribe integrity differently. How would integrity show up for you in your definition based off of your values? What does integrity mean to you that way?
Doing what you say.
Yeah.
I think period. And I think that's just in general a really good trait for an organization to have. Yeah. It's so often these are our action plans, and then no, or this is what I'm going to do on the project, and then nothing happens. And greatest, easiest way to lose trust.
Yeah, truth. And see, for me, integrity is doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can even see now, if we were both bringing integrity and we found a point of contention and resistance, we'd have to have a fairly honest and open conversation to find the point where, well, if we're not doing what we say we're going to do because it's actually not the right thing, or vice versa, how do we work through that together, creating that shared meaning of what integrity works for the work that we're doing?
Mm-hmm. You would envision potentially that I would automatically do something because it's the right thing to do. And I'm sitting there saying, well, I didn't say I was going to do that. And then, we agree we're going to do something, and then nothing happens. And there was no communication of, well, Jess didn't think it was the right thing to do. So we just, we assumed we weren't going to do it. I'm like, well, I'm already 3 months in on this project.
Exactly. And that's a work style. And that's where that shared meeting can really be leveraged. There's a book called The Messy Middle that I like, and I've always liked to play in the messy middle. And then this wonderful person wrote this book with that title, whose name I also cannot remember, but at least I can attribute it is a book, and you can go search for it on Amazon if you like it. But that's that place where I think all of our values really get to flourish as we're moving into what makes a good career path, what makes a good choice, what makes it worth doing I don't like it work, and sometimes even the hard work to get to where we want to go. And I know that's a place that you really love. Where do you want to go next with this conversation, with that setup? Because I could choose, but I want you to choose. Lead this armada, Ben.
Well, I was going to do something that I don't normally do, and this talk about the findings of my research that were pretty surprising in regards to value congruence. I don't think
Love it.
I think maybe I can count on one hand how many times I've spoken about this. So the findings were on health. The investigation was on healthcare senior leaders. And so, the research generally shows that healthcare senior leaders are pretty value aligned with their work. Healthcare workers tend to be attracted to the profession because they have certain levels of benevolence and etc. So they were very high in regards to value congruence. They were very high in regards to intrinsic job satisfaction, but they were low in regards to extrinsic job satisfaction. And so what blew me away by this was, it does make sense if you are value aligned within your work. You may find meaning behind it, but you still can be unhappy if the job isn't providing recognition, the amount of compensation you believe you deserve, and a variety of other extrinsic factors. And so I think, we're sitting here right now. I think there's one sector of leadership development really pushing this humanistic touch, value alignment, intrinsic motivation. And I don't want to lose sight, though, of the fact that you still need to know if your employees feel that they're fairly paid, if you have a good performance management system to ensure that they know that there's going to be professional growth, that they're getting recognized for the work, that like these things are still very important. It's not one or the other. It needs to be both.
I like that a lot. And why was it surprising to you?
At the time, I believed that if an employee felt that they were aligned with their work and were passionate and ready to go, that they would discount the other aspects of job satisfaction. That it was overwhelmingly important. And I think, there more studies need to be done in terms of like, well, how would you weight these in terms of, engagement and productivity and retention and such, like in terms of motivating factors to leave. But if someone and so this got me thinking, well, if someone comes up to an employee that's really value aligned with their work, but is offered more money or a greater position, how does the organization that employee works at going to retain them? I guess that was where my question started coming up for leaders.
Okay.
And, my initial answer was, if there's enough trust within the organization, that employee will go to the leader and have a conversation and try to find a way to stay. But that's not always the case. Right?
And remind me, these were senior leaders?
Yes. And so I mentioned that study, and then I kind of pulled off into another direction and path on retention. But
no, that's okay.
Those were senior leaders in healthcare. So they were the executive team, including the CEO.
Yep. And that's actually one of the things that I think is really important to notice, because I actually wonder if age was a factor in some of those findings.
I mean, it very much well could be.
Yeah. Very much well could be. Because there are different parts. I mean, Scott, who will take this and do other stuff with it past our live stream, he on my team, he talks about the fact that he always talks about the fact that I'm like in this building mode, and there's this middle building mode, and I didn't get that right. But he also talks about empire building. That's what he calls it. And then he talks about the fact that there's legacy setting. And so if we're in different stages of our career, and if we're at different places on the career ladder, regardless of the stage of our career, does that influence those things that you're talking about? Because I'm like, okay, I wanted to anchor in and go, I find it interesting for that age group, but I also am curious. I'm like, well, what about my age group? What about your age group? What about age groups that aren't represented in this conversation yet?
Oh, and I think when you're going to our age group, just what is the smart professional career move? If you can find something that is value aligned, I would recommend, that extra 5 or 10 grand probably isn't that important right now. And can you get that experience under your belt? Can you find an organization that allows you to craft your job to include a lot of the things that you want to do in the future? Can you find those mentors? Can you find an organization as well that has like gig oriented, so it can move you around internally if you need to? I think that would be more important. And I think, almost we need like a little playbook of, in these first 5 years of your career, this is what you should be looking at. These next 5 years, I never got that.
And you know what? The only way you get it is from the people who you like latch onto as mentors, or somehow go, I can actually help this person, and you're getting mentored whether you want to or not. That's the time that those pieces of knowledge are imparted. And I also wonder if it's just because it's incredibly different. I'm thinking about my dad. If my dad was telling me what to expect versus what actually happened in the first 5 years of his career versus the first 5 years of my career, there's no congruence, none at all. The only thing we have in common is that neither one of us finished college the first time around. I'll be real about that. But other than that, things took off. He, was a dad with young kids when he was starting out in his career. And I wasn't, and I was traveling the world. And so some of it is opportunity based too. And so I don't think we can look to the people we would necessarily think that would naturally come from. And so do you have mentors that like are involved in your life that you're looking up to right now? And do you have mentors that they don't know you're mentors, like super famous people or dead people, right? I'm just curious now how that fits into your realm of showing up and developing yourself and finding inspiration outside of ourselves when we need it, when times gets tough.
Yeah, as I mentioned, that I'm mentoring right now for youth. And I think one of the things that I try to push is that you're not looking for one mentor. You're, at least for how I perceive mentorship, is you're looking for subject matter experts with opinions in different areas. And you shouldn't
Mhm.
one person's opinion and then allow it to create, your decision for you. You should actually go get a bunch. And so when it comes to who I have as mentors, I actually don't have someone that is, I think, above, that is like sensei and guiding me in my life
Yeah.
and my career. But I have built a network based on my business and my
Nice.
values, people that are either below me in terms of professional growth, at my level, or above me, that I would now consider friends based on the amount of time and investment we spent having conversations. And I've built that through, like, at first the initial core group was built off of I was offering them something. So I hosted
Mhm.
in-person events, and then I also have a podcast. So I would bring people in that I thought were impressive to me, and then we would vibe and we would align, and then I would keep them closer and then give them more value, and then we'd have more conversations and it would grow from there. It was very much a process. And then there are a few people that I've met through LinkedIn or through recommendations that have very impressive careers and have done some really impressive things that I know I could go to and ask a question with, because they work in a specific industry if I ever need it. And I haven't really needed that right at the moment, because the people that I have in my inner circle, as I guess my friends slash mentors, they were more like of a mastermind,
Yeah.
personally.
Okay. Okay. I'm listening to you, and something that seems very important to the basis of all your work and how you show up is this concept of a two-way street. I find a way to connect, and then I add more value, and then I'm getting what I need, and I get to add more value. And so you're recognizing that there is a two-way street there, and you're always making sure that you're on that path of giving as receiving. I think that sometimes is overlooked in mentorship, whether it's a mentor or a mentee, specifically around the fact that we have this concept of, well, I've decided you're that, so this is what I get, without thinking it and the willingness to take it a little bit further and to actually develop a relationship that lasts beyond that interaction. So that interaction might come to an end. I'm a big believer in beginning, middle, and ends of things. And so knowing when that is, but still being able to be in relationship and serve and support.
Yeah, there's a really good book that came out not too long ago by Adam Grant called, I think it's like Give and Take. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, I've heard
Yeah.
of, I like Adam Grant. So I have a couple of his books around, but I don't have that one. What was the premise of it?
Well, it labels people as a giver. I mean, you could be both, I believe, but a giver, a taker, or a matcher. And his research was
Okay.
looking at, well, are givers more successful, or are takers more successful, or are matchers more successful?
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting. His research showed that there were very successful givers and very successful takers, and there are very unsuccessful givers and very unsuccessful takers. And it's very much a balance of, how much are you giving?
Yeah.
And takers also succeed, but they tend to have some consequences and stuff. But sometimes they don't care about it. I would label myself as a giver without expectation, because I understand that not a lot of people there there's a lesser percent of people that are going to want to engage and have a conversation with me, and a lesser percent of that are going to become, you know, longer term relationships or potential, and not resources, but I think friendships or acquaintances in my life that I'm going to want to sustain. And a very small percentage of that is actually going to sustain, probably for longer than a couple of years. And that is also going to be relevant because my career path might change, my interests might change, where I'm operating might change. And I lead those relationships with curiosity. I lead with trying to figure out how I can connect others together. And one of the biggest issues I have right now is I do like to connect, but I have nothing to ask for. And when you are connecting with people, it is good to have something to ask for, because it gives the other person something to do or look for, and it also gives a little bit more of a goal and purpose for the meeting itself. You don't want to lead with that, but it's good to at least have it in the back of your mind. I don't know what you think about that.
Well, I'll tell you right after this, because we have to remind people who are tuning in just now that I'm Jess Duell, your host of the Bold Business podcast, strategic business advisor, and And what we're doing at Red Direction is providing unique and customizable frameworks to fail faster and bounce higher as individuals and as leadership teams. Now, I've been talking with Dr. Benjamin Ritter, and some of the things that we really dug into were actually the results of his work around values, which is what he did his dissertation on. It's also how he's leveraged and built great things that are sustaining and fulfilling to him now that are going to launch him as he shifts and changes. And by the way, all of this is based off of being a giver and having a two-way street. What can I ask for? What can I connect to? How can I provide value? Even if all three are not present at the same time, understanding that those elements are important is key, and making sure that two of the three at least are there. So I want to make sure that you know this is Dr. Benjamin Ritter. You better be connecting with him on LinkedIn. You better be following his podcast. What's the name of your podcast, Ben?
The Live for Yourself Revolution.
The Live for Yourself Revolution.
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 Yeah. I gave a little energy. I tend to have, I'm a little meditative right now, a little calm. It's Friday. Had a good run.
That's good. Okay. We'll put some energy back in that. And then, so now because of all this revolution stuff, I totally forgot what you asked me.
It was, when you are connecting with individuals, and I'm sure we'll loop this back to leadership in a second, but this is a fun path that we're on. It's helpful to have something to ask for, even though you don't want to lead with that. And I don't know I want to know your opinion on that. I'm
not good at it. I'm not good at having an ask. I like to give, and I forget to ask. But that also sets up, I'm going to use, by the way, I'm also, curiosity is my number two personal value. And it's built into what we're doing at Red Direction, which another one of their values, the company values, is resourcefulness. Pretty cool, huh? All of that ties together. So coming back to this asking, I do believe it's important. And this is something that I've only started practicing in the last 24 months or so. And I'm still, like I said, I'm not good at it because it's easy to give, it's easy to connect, it's easy to hear, it's easy to offer, but it's really hard to say, thank you for asking. So I know you're in this place of need, but now I'm going to impose my need on you. And by the way, that's a thing right between my ears, and I get that. And so, so that's some mental floss, if you will, that I'm working on to change and say, well, okay, maybe it's not today, but I must circle back and say, hey, can you now? And have something in mind. And so, I look for ways to shamelessly plug because I feel like that's a little easier, which I don't know what you think about that, Ben, but I'm like, well, if I can shamelessly plug somewhere or support in some way that's going to advocate for what I can do, my asks end up being through the work that I do. So if somebody invites me to MC an event and it happens to be an unpaid one, that's fine. So what kind of exposure can I get and what kind of promotion can be done to support, right? So there is an exchange, but I do believe that exchange needs to happen so there's not an imbalance, because people don't want to keep asking from you if they can't help you out too. And that's what I've learned the hard way.
And especially if you're meeting with, so I assist with LinkedIn networking, because prospecting on LinkedIn has been crucial to my business. And if someone's responding to your outreach and they're not looking to be a client, but they are worthwhile for a conversation, that person is a connector, if I was to label that, and so they want to connect. They live off of that. And so you need to have something to offer them, or else they're not going to actually feel, they're not going to have a reason to think about you. Right. Which is what we want to do when we're connecting and networking. We want to give people reasons to remember us.
Yep. You mean not just because we're cool?
There's, I feel your coolness. I will remember it. I'm actually turning up the heat right now. But there are a lot of cool people in the world, and there's a lot of stuff going on. I even sat down and thought about this with podcasts. Like, I'm like, wow, I've listened to a lot of really good podcasts, and I've recommended them. But if I sat back and I tried to remember the guests on those podcasts, I will be, 3 names maybe.
Right.
which is like incredible because I've learned so much from podcasts over the years. So think about this when you're networking or when you're trying to build relationships,
Right.
how many times you need to get in front of somebody.
That's right. To your point. And not only being cool is memorable, but actually being able to recognize, oh, there can be an exchange here. And I think that's really where what you're getting at. And like if I were to sum it up, I need to get better at the exchange a lot. And that's okay, because that's just I'm like, all right, well, so if I want to break through, this is my hard work. This is the thing I don't like to do, but it's imperative for the path that I am on to stay on that path because I want to be on it.
Ooh, well, this is just happened to me last night. So it was a late night, closing my computer at like 11 o'clock. And I always
Nice.
update my connection spreadsheet that I have.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I can't. It's 11 o'clock. I can't do this anymore. A lot of times people save the things they don't want to do for the last minute of the day, or, so they're like, I'm just going to squeeze this in. That's the worst time to do the things that you don't want to do because you have no energy to do it. Like you are so drained. And
Right?
it's like this idea of eating the frog in the morning of the,
Yes.
what is the most important thing you need to do immediately that you don't enjoy doing, and just pop that in.
Right. Oh, I tell you what, although something I am getting better at is not working at 11 o'clock at night. My family loves me for that. I was also a long learning, so recovering one of those. And every once in a while, stuff happens, deadlines occur, commitments have been made, and that has to happen. And I'm all about that. But so if working late because that's what happens, where are the boundaries in your life? Coming back to your main value of health.
Yeah. Well, with yesterday, there was just some late night work that had to get done.
I
So I
get that.
actually
I
I
have those
actually
too.
had some nice space during the day
Mm-hmm.
to relax and do the things I wanted to do. But as a business owner, if I need to send client recaps, they get out.
Yep.
They go. And if I need to respond to some messages, then I respond to them. Could they wait till the next day? Yes. I had the opportunity though to do it yesterday. But overall, with boundaries, it's when you are with friends, when I am with my relationship, when I am taking personal time, my phone's on do not disturb. I don't have my computer in front of me. So there's work time and there's non-work time. There are compromises and sacrifices you make at times, but then you also then have to say, well, where am I going to say no to something based on the sacrifice and compromise? So you try to create a balance as well.
And when you decide what to say no, or when you decide what to say yes to, do you really like what you're saying no to at the same time? In
Yeah, I
that
think
balance.
everything is value driven.
Yeah. Our
Every it,
actions really are.
I mean, it's a lot of clients I work with, their actions are not value driven, which is one of the biggest issues. Why do they feel stuck? Why do they feel
Mm.
unsure about what
Oh,
decision to make in their life? It's because they're
the,
not. Yeah, you look
keep
like you want
going.
to say
It's because
something.
they're
No,
not.
go for it.
Oh, you see my face? You're like,
You're
it's just
going.
waiting to get out.
Yeah, I know you want
Right?
it.
Well, and that's actually interesting because what they say they value isn't what they really value. The premise of the work that we've been doing for over 20 years is you prioritize what you value, period. And so if you're not getting the results you want and you're stuck, do you really like what you're prioritizing? Do you really like what that means for your values? And if not, how do you change your priorities so that you can be more value driven? And so I think that's a kind of a
There's
big
an,
piece of that.
a caveat to that, though, because that is
Oh, I'm
sometimes the
ready.
case. That is
Yeah.
sometimes the case for sure. But there can be things impacting their ability to be intentional towards their values, the environment that
Always.
they're in,
Yep.
social pressure, familial pressure, a lack of confidence. So there's with those can actually restrict someone's ability to be more intentional. Uh, Usually, if you give someone clarity, as in what they're actually doing and what they actually care about, and then they actually realize this is what I care about, because usually the people that are stuck don't have clarity on who they are. If I asked you,
Yeah.
define yourself, they'll say, I have no idea how to, and I don't know what I stand for. If they have that piece, that usually builds more confidence. A lot of times I work with clients that they have issues with networking. They go into a room when we used to be able to go into packed rooms. And when they're having conversations, all they're thinking about is, what is this person thinking about me? Am I saying the right thing? And really fun thing happens when you get clear on your values, you stop thinking that.
Right.
And so that level of confidence that comes in self-assuredness usually leads to greater intention of someone's actions and greater alignment.
I agree with all that. And then, so I'm thinking about, let's say, family pressure, whatever that might be. It could be not getting grocery shopping right, all the way to not really feeling heard, all the way to still being at home and feeling incredibly like everything is out of control, right? So, and so many more that we can't even name. But I'm thinking about that, and I'm wondering, so can't you still be intentional even with those pressures or constraints? It just might not be all of the intention because all of the desire can't be realized, but we can still be intentional even if it's 1%.
And there comes the question of, who are you putting as more important in your life? How are you leading yourself? This concept of self-leadership. So
Yeah.
each and every single day, you are putting the priorities of everyone around you higher than yourself. And potentially, if it's relatives or parents that maybe have expectations of you, you're putting their expectations of you above yourself. And that's where.
Wait. Pause. Did you
Yeah.
hear that, everybody? That doesn't matter how old we are. Are we putting other people's expectations on ourselves about us? Wait, I didn't say it as good as you. Say it again, Ben. I didn't. You said it much better than I just did.
Rewind and listen to it. Now, basically, are we allowing other people's expectations of us make our own decisions and drive our life forward?
Yes.
And that comes again from not knowing who we truly are. When we don't know who we truly are and where we want to spend our time, it's a lot easier to give our time away. And so a lot of times when someone says, I'm too busy for this, I have too many things to do, I can't say no to this work, I can't say no to my family, I can't say no to these commitments, it's because they haven't figured out what's important to them. And
Yep.
or what's important to them is pulling them in different directions because they actually haven't figured out what really is important to them. They just, like what you said, the values they think are important aren't actually the values that they actually hold as important, but they feel it needs to be for whatever reason. Ah, what a cluster.
I know, it's huge. And I'm just thinking, and I'm like, okay, so now where does this fit in? Because this is another thing. Okay, I am typically, I don't share this much typically, but this is kind of great. As far as, because I'm like, look, I'm a Girl Scout leader. I run a business full time. I'm a wife and I'm a mother of a little boy. And I have great friendships, but none of those things really intersect. Girl Scouts doesn't help my business, nor does it help my family. It's just something I love to do because that's what it is. So gets a commitment. Volunteer work is incredibly important to me. That may or may not align to my work or my family, but there will be a section of that in my life outside of Girl Scouts because of the fact that it's important to me. And then career stuff, everything I do in the world and every conversation I have helps me get better at my craft and come up with new ways, exciting ways to show up and be curious and resourceful and bold for all of our clients and what we're producing. So there is alignment, but as far as time goes, none of my friends really want to hang out with my Girl Scouts and vice versa, right? So there are avenues and sometimes you have to choose. And I guess maybe to your point, if I were to bring this all the way home, is if I'm not getting what I want, do I still have to choose and let something go so that I can have as much as I can and as much as I want with all of that diversity, even so, not being pulled in many directions and feeling pretty confident in myself too, because I'm thinking about people out there and I'm like, you're confident and you're still busy. So there's still a way. I think it comes down to making a choice, eh?
Well, your level of busy it's all subjective because it's
Right?
like we all have the same amount of time, but how you perceive time and manage time is different than how somebody else manages and perceives time. And so I think I'm on your page where I know what time it is without looking at a clock.
Yeah.
I know how long a task is going to take before I start it. I know when I have to stop something. I know how to, what I can do in a day. Things always get done. And that's a unique trait that is, that not everybody has. And so your schedule may be very daunting to other people and very exhausting to other people to think about. But for you, it might be invigorating and a good fit. Now, if you were coming to me and saying, Ben, I feel exhausted. I feel like I'm not making progress in certain areas. I'd go, well, let's look at all the areas that you're spending your time. And then let's also look at what you care about. Which, do these all fit into those values? Wonderful. Is there a way to alter these or change these based on how much time you're investing in them to give yourself more time? Or are there things that you can change to become more in alignment? For example, I am a mentor for entrepreneurial organizations in the CPG space, in the consumer packaged goods space, because I have a passion for health, wellness, and food. And I want to network within that space as well. And I also mentor for future founders because I enjoy young entrepreneurs, and also I'm a business owner. So that helps and that assists with my own interests and my own business. But then I made a conscious choice to broaden my experiences and mentor for the universities that I've gone to. So I also mentor for Pepperdine, UIC, and Loyola. And that was a conscious choice that is more of a drain on my time and my mind because it isn't as aligned. And so I've made that commitment consciously that it is not going to be as great of a fit. And other things like volunteering, volunteering at the Sustainable Food Center in Austin, that again is a conscious choice to say, I want to expand my network within a space of interest, but still it might not be perfect. And those are good conscious decisions to make if you feel like you have the bandwidth to make them. But when I was I had this one idea for a new business. And when I launched that business, which was a supplement, it was not in alignment with my current brand. And so I put my foot down to myself and said, Ben, I know you want to launch this. We'll launch it. But then that's it. You're not going to direct your energies towards growing this product. This product either grows organically or it doesn't grow. And that was important to me. And it was smart that I did that because the business that I'm in now would not have grown exponentially as much as it has if I didn't make that decision. Other decision I could have made was I need to hire someone to go do this. I just didn't want to do that at the time.
One of the things I sensing in that, and by the way, I love that we're having these open conversations because we all have to do this all the time, regardless of what our schedule is and what it looks like to each other. And I think it's incredible that you're bringing it back to time. And I'm going to add a layer that you're talking about, but it hasn't been said yet, which is the time it takes to do a task versus the time that you give it because you also need extra headspace for it matters. And if I am taking up too much headspace on something that shouldn't be taking a lot of time, I am accidentally eroding my value set and getting myself stuck because that headspace isn't as clear as it could be, which is going to end up being like a foggy mirror.
I work with a lot of soon-to-be entrepreneurs that are growing in their professional career and want to launch a business. And I think I've said this with every client. Let's just get started because if you're an entrepreneur, this is not going to be your only business.
Right.
And they don't seem to get it, but then they start actually doing the things that we talk about, such as listening to podcasts about entrepreneurship, reading books about entrepreneurship, surrounding their life intentionally with entrepreneurship, and putting their mind within that space. And all of a sudden, their brain starts thinking differently. Yeah. And when we are investing in things, just like you said, it all takes mental energy and capacity. We have a limited amount of that per day. So if we're doing things in 8 different spaces, how productive are we going to be? How creative are we going to be? How much are we going to actually be able to make progress? Maybe doing something, but are we actually embedding it within ourselves?
Mm-hmm. That was a really good last word. If we were recording, I would have been like, that's the last word. But we're not recording, we're live. So
let's just stop that and
I think we should.
I'm gonna get a snack.
I know, right? All done. We could cheer. I saw you had a bottle of water. I've got my cup of tea. We can have a cheer. We can call it good. So knowing that that's a great place to end, I do want to throw in a little bonus. If there's a bonus to be had, is there something that you thought you were going to say or something that showed up that didn't have a way to get worked into the conversation that you wanted to say? Because this would be the time to say it, Ben.
A lot of times people tie in this idea of values and purpose. And so when I'm talking about values, we're talking about self-leadership. How are you leading yourself in alignment with who you are at your core? And then people go, well, that's about purpose. And then if you notice, we didn't really talk about purpose that much today. I think purpose is one of the worst things I've ever learned in my youth was, find your purpose, because it led me down a path that wasn't true to me. And so I think we have to be very, very careful about what we attribute and how much power we give to this idea of purpose. Purpose is just like your values are just a source of motivation, energy, and fulfillment. If it does not become that, if it is not that, then it is not where you should be spending your time, or we need to redefine our expectations about purpose. Because purpose is the last thing I'll say, I promise. Your purpose is something that you've decided to believe in. It's not something that is just there. Like, you had your experiences and it became something that you then said, this is important. So if you've decided it, you are in control of it. You are greater than it. So please, if your purpose is bringing you down, go take a break from your purpose.
I couldn't have said it better myself. We are an armada.
Army, rowing in the same direction.
That's right. That's exactly right. Okay. Listeners, watchers, wherever you happen to be getting this information today.
Astral projectors.
Yes, exactly. That's right. Add your experiences. We want to know what your take of this conversation is. We want to know what you've done that we could learn from as well, more than our conversation here today. Because as a leader of yourself, potentially as a leader of your business, definitely the leader of the role you're in, every role in your life, you can benefit from other people's experiences and learn from them if you choose. So tell us what your biggest learning about this topic is, and tell us what you would add to this conversation as well. And don't forget, connect with Dr. Benjamin Ritter. Don't forget, stay tuned, because even though we live stream this today, it will end up in our podcast feed. So no worries, you'll get to hear it again, which is great. And until next time.